And so would you please welcome my brother, John Mark Comer, to come and chat with all of us. Aren't you so excited to be in a room of 800 women?
Yes, or no, or I don't know, I'm neutral.
Did you pierce your ear? That's new.
I was in New York last weekend, and I brought my daughter Sunday. I don't know where she is, at 16, and I thought, how do I bond with my daughter? It's a challenge. And she wanted a nose ring, and I got tattoos with my boys on trips.
Okay, all right.
So I said, let's do it.
I think you're like the cool hip dad. Tattoos,
or
piercings.
the like embarrassing midlife crisis. I don't think my lovely wife is all that warm to it, but it comes out.
Oh man. Well,
thanks for that great setup for me right there.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
A better teacher than interviewer, clearly.
I have to say there was great debate on if Brooke should also be a part of this session because he is a great interviewer and I'm not known to be one. So let's find out. No, many of you know John Mark as an author and a speaker. Really, you've become a prominent voice on the topic of spiritual formation. But I know him as my big brother, and he is all those things, but he's also my big brother. So would you like to hear a story about John Mark as a big brother? And you can just sit and listen and endure. Aren't I really good at interviewing?
First you point out my earring, which I'm already weird about. And
I
then
know.
now you're going to tell a story. And
I'm trying to help you connect with the room of 800 women and just humanize you a little bit. So here we go. So when I was probably around 10 years old, so John Mark would have been 15, I was at our neighbor's house who lived directly behind our house on like 5 acres of land. And we're at her house in the middle of the day watching TV because that's what good homeschooled kids do. And we're watching something on the TV and we look to the side of the TV and there's this black thing that's moving. And at first we thought it was like a cord for the TV, but it's moving. And we look and it's a snake inside the house. Now, it was a tiny little garter snake, but we were 10, so it might as well have been a rattlesnake, right? I still feel that way about garter snakes. So I ran. Her parents were gone. I ran home back to our house. You probably don't even remember this.
No memory.
Ran home back to our house to get help. And I get to our house, and my parents' cars are not in the driveway, but I think my brother's home, and so the door's locked. I don't have a key. I'm pounding on the door, trying to get my brother to come to the door so he can rescue us. And he also, like a good homeschooler, had been taking a nap in the middle of the day. Answers the door in his bathrobe. I'd woken him up from his nap.
That
and
tracks.
I am just like, you've got to come help us. There's a snake inside the house. And he just looks at me. He said, I hate snakes. Closes the door, locks it, and goes back up to his nap. I don't think I ever set foot back in my friend's house. So if you have a problem with snakes, don't ask him. But if you have a question about how to walk the journey of becoming more like Jesus.
Oh, that was a hard turn.
That was a hard turn. No, but
I have no memory of that.
I know, you probably don't.
Whatsoever. I don't even know if that was true.
You were probably still dreaming mid-nap.
But that sounds like something I would have done.
Yeah, it really did happen.
Or still do.
Yeah, probably. No, but in all seriousness, you live out everything that you teach. You really do. All that you talk about, you live first. And so I can't think of a better person to have this conversation with. We are all moms, buried by the dailyness of life. Moms in particular, all parents, but I think moms in particular are some of the busiest people I know. It's hard to eliminate certain aspects of hurry in our lives. And we are
passive aggressive? What's that?
No, it's just honest. And with culture constantly telling us to just push harder, try harder. The first thing I would love to hear you just talk about, whatever comes to mind, is how do we guard against just that pervasive lie of doing more, of being more, of trying harder? How do we guard from that invading how we approach spiritual formation as like another thing to do better at, to try harder at, to add to the list that we know is not going to get checked off? How do we guard from approaching the spiritual walk that way?
Well, first off, it's an honor to be in a room like this. I've spoken at a lot of places over the years that I don't ever remember a room of just all mothers. And I honor you for the role that you play. And many of us, all of us, that literally would not be alive if it were not for the role that you play. We're deeply grateful for every one of you, and of course to my wife and my own mother and my sisters. There's lots of avenues to explore there, I think the great danger is that there's a few. One is that we imagine, quote, spiritual formation as like another thing that we're not currently doing or not doing enough of that now we need to start doing. Danger two, we then add it on top of our already overbusy, exhausted, can't keep up with it life. Three, we then approach it through this like either American like spiritual wellness kind of category of how does this make me well, or if you're more upwardly mobile, careerist, type A, through like how do I track my spiritual formation up and to the right, just like I track my career, my salary, and my children, God save their soul, and all of that up and to the right. Those are just a few of the like easy kind of, okay, now you're off the path, and you're on another path, and you call it spiritual formation. So I think it's really important to just remember what we're talking about. We're talking about, first off, something that's already happening to you. You are already being spiritually formed, not just by being at a Christian event this weekend. Tuesday morning when you woke up and went to work, or you woke up to your baby, crying, whatever, you were being formed in that moment through a vast ecosystem of chosen and unchosen, conscious and unconscious, intentionally habitual or habits that you have chosen, and just stuff that is wildly out of your control. You are becoming a type of person. That's all we mean by spiritual formation, is that your spirit, your inner woman, is being formed into a particular shape. Everybody is formed into a particular shape. You see it in older people who, maybe aren't trying as hard to defy gravity. That was a strong joke, by the way.
Well played.
You see etched into their face and into how they carry, if you're, there's a new emergent science of bioenergetics that talks about your muscular armory and how the body actually displays the personality, even your posture, the way your shoulders are shaped, the way your neck falls, how thin you are, the shape of your eyes. All of this can tell us about who you are as a person and who you become. And so you see this in older people because they've really taken on a particular shape. An extreme example would be somebody who literally a scowl is etched into their permanent features. It's not like they scowl, they are a scowl.
Yeah.
And there's another word for it that I won't talk about. But you're like, some people have that by 21. Yes, they do. It doesn't always take 80 years. And so that's just, they've become a particular kind of person. And that's a negative example. There are positive examples of people that just radiate life. It's like that 1 Peter line, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. They just radiate that from like just as an inner countenance. If you look at ancient Christian art, like the kind of what we would call Catholic, or it's Byzantine technically, you'll notice if you're an artist, there's no shadows. It's not lit like a traditional piece of art. It's all lit from the inside. There's gold and light coming from inside the saint out. And it's a symbolic picture of the ideas as you grow and mature in Christ. You have this luminosity of spirit that you're like, you radiate from the inside out. So I think it's just, we're not even answering your question at this point. I think it's really important to talk about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're not talking about adding spiritual disciplines into your life.
Yeah.
We're not talking about, block scheduling your time. That's all downwind of this. We're not talking about reading more books by Catholic writers. We're talking about you're becoming a type of person, and you have a role in the kind of person that you become. And you're not a blank canvas that you get to draw on your ideal personality shape, but you're a living being with agency, and how you live and how you respond to how other people around you live will particularly shape you. So I've said too much, and we haven't even come to your thing. But I think it's important. We're really not talking about an addition. The first thing we're really talking about is subtraction. And that's where, maybe to begin to answer your question, Dallas Willard used to categorize spiritual disciplines into two basic categories. There's no official list of practices or spiritual disciplines because they're based on anything that you see Jesus regularly do that, in the four Gospels at least, seem to have an implicit intention in them for him to commune with his Father. And so an obvious example would be, there's just countless stories of Jesus sneaking away and hiding, which any good mom should learn from. And going into solitude, But there are other things that aren't on traditional spiritual disciplines lists that are just as valid, like what we would call hiking, backpacking, and mountain climbing. Jesus did all of that as a way, we spiritualize it into like silence and solitude and stillness, and we rent like a $500 Airbnb. I'm like, Jesus just got up early and like went up, You can do that too. And so, but Willard used to categorize all of the practices into what he called practices of engagement and practices of abstinence. By engagement, he just meant, these are kind of more psychological categories. They feel like things that you do, and practices of abstinence are more things that you don't do. So, for example, a classic discipline of abstinence would be fasting. You're not doing anything. You're not eating. Or solitude. You're not technically doing anything. You might read books and pray, but the base of solitude is just you're not with people, and you're not with external inputs. The only inputs become God and whatever's coming up in your own inner being. Whereas a discipline of engagement would be like witness, for example. You're like telling somebody the good news of Jesus and the kingdom of God. You're doing something. And, Willard and other very adroit people that really understood the human condition and what it means to be a soul would point out that disciplines of abstinence often help when we can't stop doing something that we want to stop doing. For example, anybody that struggles with compulsive behavior, another way of saying that is anybody, if you can't stop overeating, overspending, overdrinking, gossiping, whatever it is, you can't stop, you have this compulsive thing, then the disciplines of abstinence are profoundly helpful. Like fasting is probably the first place you should go. If gossip is a struggle, in particular if you have issues with, overconsumption, if gossip is an issue, if you look at the monastic tradition, the abbots would often prescribe for the monks times of zero speech, which is a little hard to do as a mom, so you just have to use this as an analogy. But it's profoundly, like I just did 5 days recently of no speech away up in Big Sur. And it's profound how, like, coming back, how much more conscious you are of what's coming out of your mouth and how much of it's just nonsense or inane or wasteful or unkind. You just become more conscious of it after you've abstained from it for a few days. So those disciplines of abstinence, I'm going somewhere with this, I promise, are more helpful for the aspects of our quote formation and our discipleship to Jesus where we struggle to stop doing things that we don't want to do. On the other hand, disciplines of engagement are most helpful when we want to start doing something that we're not currently doing. So, for example, the discipline of service is a great way to kind of get yourself out of, which is basically also another word for the discipline of service is just mothering.
I was going to say.
Is
I think
a
they've
great
got that
way.
one down.
No, and we need to talk about that. It's a great way to get out of yourself and begin to actually love people and break through, in particular, like apathy, which is just almost pretty much a non-existent problem for this room, so I won't say much more. But I have some teenage boys they could use the discipline of service. They could use some activation. And it's not that the disciplines of abstinence aren't helpful for them, but they really need to, they're at that stage, they need to get up, get energy, learn to work, learn to live for other people, learn to not be narcissistic, which every single man in particular has to learn. What's the line? Manhood is the defeat of childhood narcissism. Every teenage boy has to go through the defeat of childhood narcissism. And if they don't, they'll just get paid a lot of money to be a narcissist eventually in their career. And so that's part of your job, moms, defeat childhood narcissism. My point is, they need more disciplines of engagement.
Yeah.
All of that is a very long way of saying, for the vast majority of mothers in the room, just by sheer virtue of your stage of life and God's calling on you in this season of life, you need to massively over-index on disciplines of abstinence. In particular, disciplines that are about doing less, not doing more. So if you're going to bring more intentionality to your, quote, spiritual formation or just discipleship to Jesus, probably you need to start with a life audit that really focuses on embracing your limitations and focuses on subtraction, not on addition, on doing less, not on doing more, and in particular on prioritizing rest and relationships, or whatever it is, those two general categories, regardless of your personality, that you deeply need to move forward. And it's such a simple claim, but just do not think of, I have this exhausted, overbusy, stressed out life. Now I need to do all this extra stuff to really grow. First off, that's not even true. Secondly, the main thing you likely need to do is stop doing so much, which preaches nice, but is really hard to figure out how to do it on Monday morning.
Yeah. Well, you are leading perfectly into where I wanted to go next. I remember a handful of years ago talking to you about this very subject and my crazy full life and just trying to make sense of it all and wanting to live really intentionally. And mid-conversation, you just looked at me. We joke in the family that don't ever go to John Mark for advice. He doesn't give very, very good advice, but he gives really good prophetic wisdom.
What does it say that I'm not aware of that joke? What does that say about me?
You give advice through the lens in which you would receive it. Don't get a puppy, it'll ruin your life. Don't get it, which has ruined Brooke's life.
That was great advice. I just want to clarify, and you would be, never mind.
It's true. But John Mark is prophetic way more often than he has any idea. And so for counsel, we will often go to John Mark. And I was going to you for just some direction in how do I live this out in my everyday life. And you said to me, Elizabeth, your entire life right now is spiritual formation. And you explained the difference between active spirituality and passive spirituality, which you kind of touched on even in how we approach some of those practices. But will you, for the room, unpack for them what you unpacked for me when we had that conversation? You probably don't even remember it. It was really helpful to my stage of life.
No, it was really helpful when I was introduced to that. This is language that was very common in the Christian tradition until recently, so I was not familiar with it after growing up in really healthy churches. But it's been used for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's important to note these are psychological categories that are a bit arbitrary, not theological categories. And by active spirituality, what earlier Christian teachers meant by this, this is not a phrase pulled directly from Scripture. What they meant by it was the aspects of our discipleship to Jesus, our faith, our formation, where it feels like, again, psychologically, we do something. So, for example, reading Scripture in the morning before you go about your day. Theologically, I'm happy to say that's a work of grace, But psychologically, it kind of feels like I did it or did not do it. Like I set my alarm or I didn't. I hit snooze or I didn't. I got up and I read or I didn't. Kind of feels like this thing that I do to follow Jesus. Passive spirituality is the aspects of our discipleship, our formation, and our faith where it feels more like someone else does something to us That may be God. That may be our 3-year-old, interrupting us during our quiet time. That may be our, bad news we just got from the principal about our 9-year-old, maybe whatever. It may be satanic, maybe something that the evil one does. And it becomes then about our consent and cooperation or our resistance and our rebellion. So, tried and true, deeply biblical Christian idea is that we grow most of all through our pain and our suffering. But a very important caveat there that is pretty obvious is that suffering in and of itself does not make you more Christ-like. It may make you more demonic, right? It's all about how you respond to it. So 2 people can go through the same traumatic experience. One person 10 years later is verging on sainthood, and the other is not even a Christian anymore. They're angry, they're bitter, they're getting the scowl etched into their face. And that's because for suffering to have a formative effect on us, and I don't mean suffering in some grandiose way. Suffering can just be parenting is a form of suffering. No, seriously, all love is a form of suffering. I think Jan Pesinius is back there somewhere. She gave me this over here somewhere. Yeah. Where is she? Somewhere. Hi, Jan. Jan, you gave me a book by Calvinists. I cannot stand Calvinism. And I liked half of this book a lot, and that's a huge emotional leap for me. She gave me this book called Don't Waste Your Sorrows, and it's hyper-deterministic, and I could not possibly disagree with the theology of it more, but the gist of it, I just have to say that because I'm that person, the gist of it was so profoundly simple and beautiful. I'll carry it with me the rest of my life, and it's just basically that love, as defined by Jesus, is self-sacrificial, willing the good of another ahead of your own. Therefore, all love is a form of suffering. Sacrifice never stops hurting. No matter how Christ-like you become, it's always a form of suffering. Therefore, suffering is the primary way that we grow into people of love. So one of the problems with our self-help, self-actualization culture, in particular for women, is because parenting is not portrayed as a form of suffering love, but as a form of self-actualization. And because most people have kids now because they want to, not for thousands of years before us, because you need children to survive on your farm. Yeah. Now children are a liability that are there partially to help your self-actualization rather than a necessity to live together in community. That's a huge generational shift. It's huge. And massively changes the motivation behind what parenting is, why we parent, but it doesn't change what parenting is. It doesn't change the fact that parenting is a form of suffering. Yeah. And if you do not understand that, you go in, and marriage too. Yeah. And if you don't go into it with that mindset, then you're gonna have major problems, especially with your kids, because you can't divorce them. You can't divorce your spouse, by the way, just to clarify, if you're a Christian. But, if you're an American, you can.
But think about that in the room for a second. I think there'd probably be none of us in the room that would say that's the lens at which we were looking at marriage through when we got married or deciding to have a first kid.
No.
That's not the lens that we're looking through.
I remember my therapist saying to me, is this legend, he said, nobody walks into a hospital room. I'm going to go visit a friend this weekend who just had a baby and drop off a little gift because I'm just an amazing person. And,
just not when snakes are involved.
Nobody walks into that hospital room and says, I am so sorry. This precious Imago Dei human being is going to cause you more pain, suffering,
wreck your life,
heartache, trauma than anyone other than possibly your husband will ever cause you. May God give you grace and peace, and may you become a person of love through it. Nobody says that. We're like, congratulations! You're saying this to the person that's not going to sleep for the next 6 months of their life.
No kidding. Who just went through the great trauma of birth.
Of birth.
The greatest trauma your body will ever experience.
Which is on page 3 of the Bible called the curse.
Yes.
So again, So, and please do not misunderstand me. I don't mean this in a cynical way. So what you see is around motherhood would be a good example. Marriage would be a both gender one. Is you see this ridiculous idealization of it. Mm-hmm. And even it's like elevation to this self-actualization kind of thing. And then you see the toxic like fallout of that through cynical sarcasm. So on one end, like think about just the like gap between like old school 90s Hollywood rom-coms, which all end, if nothing with marriage. And then like sitcoms where they're just like B-wording at each other constantly. And you just hear this about like when parents just gripe and they're just off, what they're doing is they're offloading emotional toxicity about how hard their life is because their mindset is like this Hollywood, Elizabeth Gilbert self-actualization thing, not cruciform love. Yeah. And so then you swing back and forth between unrealized idealism and toxic, sarcastic cynicism. And both of those are just profoundly linked and profoundly unhealthy. Yeah. And so my point here isn't to be cynical, it's to be Christian. It's to understand that we approach everything through the lens of the cross, and on the other side of the cross isn't just something that Christ did for us, it is something that we do with Christ. We join Christ on the cross. Yeah. And we follow his example, and we take up our own cross, and we find union with God through following the cruciform pattern of Christ. And on the other side of that is resurrection. I mean, this is like the Christ story. It is through death that life comes. It is through suffering, sacrificial love that we are liberated and set free into the people that we most deeply desire to be. Yeah. But you got to go through the cross to get to the empty tomb. So passive spirituality is all about like, what are your crosses? Yeah. What are the things out of your control of your life? They're almost entirely things that we did not choose, would not choose, and if we could do anything, we would remove them. Yeah. And it's not always bad. Like if there's certain forms of suffering in your life that you can remove it. I think just this is a general principle level. Like if there's a job that's causing you pain and you can get out of it and live simpler, then quit your job. If there's like a situation you can get out of, then get out of it. Yeah. As long as you have the freedom to do that. But most of the most painful things in our life we can't get out of. Yeah. And so it's like the AA line, like, or what do they say in the Midwest about winter? Like if you can't get out of it, get deeper into it. And so I think there's a wisdom that somebody's like laughing. You're like, I'm from Minnesota. That is bad advice. Yes. They are from Minnesota. They are from Minnesota. Look at this is what I thought of, just like miserable, freezing cold. I've not even been to Minnesota before, but I know you make winter and nice furniture. So thank you for your contribution to America. So if you can't get out of it, get deeper into it. Like if you have to give God your consent. And that's why your teaching this morning was so profound, Elizabeth. It was just absolutely profound. And I will have to journal more about it in the morning. The pearl analogy, I mean, that will preach. I don't know where you stole that, but that was... Yes, it will. Look for that in an upcoming sermon from your brother.
We got analogies like that all day long.
All day long. Oh, those are good. They stay with us. And, so you have to give it your consent. You have to choose, Jacques Philippe, who's a writer that I'm profoundly influenced by the last few years. He would say, you must choose what you have not chosen. I hate that line. Yeah. Freaking and it's so hate true. It. Yeah. But I think to your question, where the rubber meets the road for you guys is, should you practice Lectio Divina? 100%. And I'd love to chat about that. Should you read scripture more? Yes. Should you blah, blah, blah? Sure. Yes. But likely the way that you will most profoundly be transformed in this season of your life is just by responding to the constant interruptions of your life, the suffering, sacrificial requirements of being a mom, whatever stage you're at, with consent and grateful yieldedness rather than with contempt and cynicism. And that is really easy for me to say, And if you were to follow me around my house for a week, you'd see me violate what I just said every 13 minutes.
Yeah.
But this is the spiritual journey.
Yeah.
It is moving toward the cross.
Yeah.
And every time I'm moving away from the cross, I'm moving away from Christ and from my own formation.
Yeah.
And so the daily spiritual journey, what will make me 20 years from now more like Christ or less, is proportionately how much every day I can join Christ on the cross.
I love that you just said all of that, because I can just speak for myself. That has been so true. Whew. In the last 9 years of my motherhood journey, that have just been so different than what I thought they would be. It's so hard. And yet, like, I could talk about suffering all day long, because it has radically reordered and changed my life and has been the biggest gift. I wouldn't wish the last 9 years of our life on anybody, but I actually wouldn't want it to be different because of what it has done in me, and not just in me, what it has done in our family. And yet, to what you said, it's so easy in the midst of our day-to-day lives to forget that, to realize we are resenting each and every kid, each and every situation, our husbands. So I'm curious, because you mentioned, like, it's much harder to live out in your actual everyday life, and when your kids are frustrating you, and when you're stressed and you're busy. When you find yourself, like, you've tipped over into, I'm not viewing any of this as good, or it's forming me, what are the things that you do in your everyday life to, like, draw you back to the cross with Jesus? Like, draw you back to that place of wanting to be able to trust that God is working out things that you can't see in the midst of the really hard day with your kids, or the hard week, or whatever it is.
I mean, I think it's just like most things, it's all about the right kind of relational connection with God and with other people. So on the with other people side, everything thrives in, all the bad stuff thrives in secrecy. Mm-hmm. That's why, like, if you track with AA, they just beat the drum of we're only as sick as the secrets we keep. Mm. And it's why the loss over the last few hundred years in the Protestant stream of the church of the discipline of confession. Mm-hmm. If you're aware of this, confession has profoundly changed in the Western church. It used to be, I confess my sins to a trusted confessor. Now it's, I say sorry to God in the privacy of my own mind at church. Mm-hmm. That's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. I say sorry to God in my privacy of my own mind all of the time, and not nearly enough. But I don't think of that as the biblical practice of confession. Yeah. The biblical practice of confession is embodied. It's to another person.
You're teeing up tonight perfectly, because that's what we're talking about tonight.
There it is. Okay, enough said. So I can't overestimate the importance of relational connection that is honest.
Yeah.
Many people have relational connection but are profoundly dishonest with themselves, much less with their closest friends. And then just relational connection with God. I loved your two questions of, what were they? What's going on right now? Mm-hmm. Or what do you want to say to me about it? I took notes, I promise.
What's going on?
Yes.
Like, asking myself, what's going on? And asking God, what do you want me to know?
What do you want me to know about it? That's what it was. Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Those two questions are prompting interiority, which can be especially difficult for moms, just because your whole life is so external, especially if you have young kids. It gets harder and easier as your kids get older. So it gets more, interiority gets easier as your kids get older, because it's more of a mind game. If you have teenagers, you know what I'm talking about. And so you're like, I got to get into my mind because I'm about to lose my mind. But if you have little kids, it's not a mind game. It's like it's a physical game. It's just like, you need just like bodies on hand. Grandma, like, you just need like bodies, And it's not really that, it's pretty straightforward. It's not all that psychological. If it is, that's probably about you, not about them. It's just like physical. And so interiority is really difficult, particularly when you have little kids. You can barely get 2 seconds to not get, I'm hanging with, Ellis, my nephew, who's just the most delightful kid. And when he's awake, there's not a lot of interiority going, There's a lot of like, just save him from death going on, And, but so those two questions are prompting interiority, and interiority is absolutely crucial to the spiritual life. Just the ability to notice and name what you're feeling to God and to close friends. That's really all it is. Noticing and naming what you are feeling to God and to trusted friends. That has to be part of your life, no matter what your personality structure is. If you're an S or an N on the Myers-Briggs, if you're familiar with that, it'll come much more easier to some personalities than others. And whatever your stage of life is, whether you're an empty nester who's been 6 hours a day in contemplative prayer, or like, not that. It doesn't matter. Interiority is still where God is found. The kingdom of God is within you. And so within the contours of your personality and your stage of life, I just think it's ultimately about pausing for moments, paying attention to your emotional state. And this will often be really quick if you have little kids. And just noticing it and naming it to God. Just naming what you're feeling has its own power. It's like, it's like if you're struggling with physical symptoms and all of a sudden a label is given to it, a name is given to it. Nothing's changed, but you feel this vast psychological relief.
Huge.
He's like, okay, it's this. And even if it's bad, you're like, well, it was already there.
Yep.
And now I know what it is, and now I can approach it with more intelligence. And, So the same is true in our emotional life. I think it's not a surprise that one of the first stories about human beings, God asked them to name something. And so I just think naming your emotions to God often give you just a little bit of space from them, which then gives you a little freedom from their dominance over your well-being. It gives you a little bit more perspective. They're like, oh, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, but I'm not only feeling overwhelmed. I'm also feeling really excited about this thing. And I'm also really happy about this. And I'm profoundly grateful for this. And I am so sad about this. And all of these emotions are true of me, even if one is at the forefront right now of my heart. And then most importantly, it gives you a little space where you then maybe could be more responsive and less reactive. And this is a huge challenge for me that my wife would know, just the emotional regulation side, which if you have any neurodiversity stuff going on in your brain will make it harder for you or for your kids to grow. And this will be really easy for other people and really hard for people like myself and your daughter and others like that. The ability to have emotions and feelings and not let them dictate your behavior is difficult for everybody. It's more difficult for some because of neurobiology stuff. And you have to get that space to even stand a chance to be responsive rather than reactive. And so much of what we want to be as parents is responsive and not reactive.
And even taking that noticing to the reactivity of what is happening here? Am I reacting to my kids, or am I reacting as I'm a kid? Because now they are responding in the same way that I wish I could have as a kid. Or so often as we're parenting, we are also reliving our childhood while it's happening, especially when we parent teenagers. It's I didn't even realize all this stuff.
I can't go there. Right, that's good.
All right, next question.
No, just kidding.
No,
absolutely. It's the Rollheiser line. What we don't transform, we transmit. Meaning, if you don't do this work, your kids will all have to do it. If you don't get access to this, and insight alone will not change you. So I am incredibly insightful of my inner life, and I still am a bit of a walking disaster at times. So insight alone will not. This is the great myth of evangelicalism and therapeutic culture. It thinks that knowing the right insight, one says about the Bible, the other says about your family of origin, how your parents messed you up, will then turn you into the perfect person. I'm sorry. You can know a lot about the Bible and a lot about how you became who you became. That is not the same thing as becoming somebody different. And so insight is beautiful, and it feels awesome because it takes nothing from us other than a really good therapist or a really great sermon. But change feels like the cross.
Yes.
And it takes so much longer. But it can't start without insight.
Yeah.
So if you don't create space for interiority to get insight, which is mostly about just paying attention to your relational life and your emotional experience of it, that's the path. And the more you can pay attention to that, then the more you can name that to close friends who then can just keep you appraised of it and walk with you over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Like something like that is the spiritual journey.
I love that. And I want to switch gears a little bit, although I feel like it tracks with everything we've been talking about. You and I have never been described as type B or C. Never.
I didn't even know there was a type C. They shouldn't even be like in the same universe. It's not
I don't know. But that's not how anyone has ever described us. Sometimes people will say, like I've heard people say this about you, I've heard people say it about me, like, they're so easygoing. We're not easygoing at all. We just fake it really, really well.